All right, let's start. Hi, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the Yugabyte Cloud session in the Distributed SQL Summit. As you no doubt heard, this morning we announced general availability of Yugabyte Cloud. I hope you all had a chance to catch Karthik's keynote this morning where he talked about it. In this session, we're going to deep dive into some of what Yugabyte Cloud offers. We're going to talk about its capabilities. And then Chirag is going to provide a demo of Yugabyte Cloud so you can actually see it in action. With that, let's get started. Quick introductions. My name is Sudha Srinivasan. I'm the VP of Product Marketing here at Yugabyte. I've been in the tech industry for over 15 years, wearing multiple hats. I've worked at Nutanix, Deloitte, Microsoft, and quite a few startups. Chirag, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sudha. Hi, everyone. My name is Chirag Narang. I'm the product lead for Yugabyte Cloud. Prior to Yugabyte, I was at MuleSoft, Cognizant. I've done a bit of work in the API space, infrastructure, and consulting in app dev. Excited to be here.
Perfect. Thanks, Chirag. So let's jump right in, folks. So Yugabyte Cloud is a fully managed offering of YugabyteDB. So let's start there. What is YugabyteDB? YugabyteDB is a distributed SQL database for transactional applications. We are focused on transactional applications that need a distributed database. And what YugabyteDB offers is basically a database that you can deploy as a cluster of nodes, but it presents a single logical SQL database to the layer above. So some of the key attributes of a distributed SQL database are all the data is distributed across the different nodes of the YugabyteDB cluster. All the transaction processing is also distributed across all the nodes. So there are no single points of failure. There are no bottlenecks. There is no scaling limits and so on. But then it also presents a SQL interface. In the case of Yugabyte, it's basically a Postgres-compatible interface to the layer above. So when the applications are talking to the database, it's as if they're talking to a Postgres database. YugabyteDB is 100% open source and it runs in any cloud. Right? So distributed SQL is a new category of databases that has emerged. You can think of it as an evolution of what we've seen in databases over the past 25, 30 years, right? For the first 20 years, 25 years, SQL ruled the roost, right? That is how application developers are used to building applications. Relational data modeling, asset transactions, these were all kind of taken for granted from the database. And that worked great. So they were using Oracle and then Postgres and MySQL and open source databases. That worked great. But then you started seeing applications scaling, applications demanding resilience from the underlying database. And these monolithic RDBMSs were not able to provide that. So then you saw the evolution and the emergence of NoSQL, non-relational databases that gave you resilience, scale, and geo-distribution, but at the expense of relational data modeling and asset transactions and so on. Distributed SQL is now bringing together the best of both worlds. So you get relational data modeling, asset transactions, consistency, and so on, but you also get the resilience, scale, and geo-distribution of a non-relational database, of a cloud-native database. Right? So distributed SQL is a cloud-native database. Yugabyte's mission is to become the default database for the cloud, and we're doing this with distributed SQL. So some of the key attributes of a distributed SQL database, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but you have Postgres compatibility, which is kind of the foundation, right? You want to be compatible with a well-known and widely adopted SQL interface. We chose Postgres. Yugabyte is Postgres feature compatible, not just wire compatible. And the way we achieve that is by actually reusing the query layer of PostgreSQL rather than rewriting it. So application developers can be from day one, right from the time they start YugabyteDB, they can start being productive, right? They can bring their applications with them. They can bring their migration tools with them. They can bring their Postgres extensions, everything, triggers, stored procedures. It all works with YugabyteDB, right? And that is critical because there is no learning curve. You can just get started. Now, customers typically look for that plus one of these three attributes: resilience, horizontal scalability, geo-distribution, right? Resilience is architectural resilience, where the database is able to survive failures in the underlying infrastructure and still be up and running. So zone level failures, even region level failures, and still you have the database up and running. Horizontal scalability is the ability to scale the underlying database cluster by adding nodes without limits, right? So being able to scale out and scale back in when you need less demand. And then geo-distribution is being able to deploy a YugabyteDB cluster in flexible geo-distributed topologies using synchronous replication, asynchronous replication, and geo-partitioning, right? So these are some of the key attributes of a YugabyteDB database. And now let's talk about how you would consume YugabyteDB, because one of the things that we are very proud of is that we offer very flexible consumption models for startups and enterprises that want to use YugabyteDB, right? You can, of course, go and download the open source software, deploy it in any environment of your choice, and be up and running. It's 100% open source and it's free to use. So you can go online, get the software and start using it. But for companies that want more operational support, more help with deploying this at scale, we offer Yugabyte Platform. Yugabyte Platform, think of it as self-managed database as a service. So Platform comes with, of course, the database itself, but you also get this cloud stack, which basically orchestrates infrastructure operations, intelligent day two operations of the database, and so on. So basically the way it works is Yugabyte Platform is cloud stack software. You deploy it in your VPC and you point it to your AWS or Azure or Google Cloud environment. And from there, Yugabyte Platform takes care of provisioning the infrastructure, spinning up database clusters, and presenting it to your application teams, right? So a lot of large enterprises, companies that want this kind of automation and orchestration use Platform in their VPCs. Now, the third option that we are announcing now is Yugabyte Cloud. Yugabyte Cloud is a fully managed database as a service. The difference between Yugabyte Cloud and Yugabyte Platform is that in the case of Yugabyte Cloud, that cloud orchestration software is being run by and managed by Yugabyte for you. So you as a customer can just come create an account in Yugabyte Cloud and get a database cluster and you're off to the races, right? You can start connecting it to your application and using it. You're not provisioning, deploying any of that. You're not managing the underlying infrastructure or managing the operations of your database, right? In the case of Yugabyte Cloud, the entire software stack, both the cloud orchestration software and the databases are running in Yugabyte's VPCs rather than yours, right? So that is a big difference. In the case of Platform, it is your infrastructure. You deploy the software, but it's the same software running in Platform and in cloud, right? Basically, the cloud orchestration software is the same. In the one case, you're running it and you're managing it as a private DBAS. In the other case, it's a fully managed DBAS where we handle it for you, right? So that brings us to Yugabyte Cloud. This is the new GA offering that we have. It is effortless distributed SQL. Yugabyte Cloud gives you all the goodness of YugabyteDB. So you get open source, Postgres compatible, resilient, scalable, geo-distributed database, but as a fully managed service. So you get instant productivity. You're up and running in just a few minutes with a Yugabyte Cloud account. World-class operations taken care of for you. So we handle all the database operations, infrastructure operations, and so on. And you're able to deploy Yugabyte Cloud in flexible, global, and multi-cloud deployment topologies, right? Yugabyte Cloud is secure by design. We're going to talk about some of the security capabilities of the cloud service. And we give you enterprise SLAs. So now, if you're an application developer, you get world-class, awesome distributed SQL database, but without any of the hassle of managing the database or managing the infrastructure or any of that, right? So basically, it is just, so you bring the apps, we handle the database for you. And that is what Yugabyte Cloud offers. So let's talk about some of the capabilities of Yugabyte Cloud, right? First of all, as we had mentioned earlier, easy scaling. Yugabyte Cloud, if you want to scale your database, you can both scale up and scale out. You can increase the size, the number of vCPUs in each node of the YugabyteDB cluster that you get from Yugabyte Cloud, or you can just keep adding nodes and grow your cluster horizontally, right? Horizontal scaling. So that is something that we provide very simply, just clicks of a button, and you can be scaling your cluster. Resilience, it comes ready. So it's basically continuous availability of your database clusters. Even if there are infrastructure failures, you don't have to see that at all, right? So we give you that architectural resilience in the cloud service. The ability to deploy a YugabyteDB cluster in Yugabyte Cloud in flexible geo-distributed topologies is an important attribute. Then no hassle upgrades. You don't have to worry about upgrades, managing the software, none of that. We are handling that for you. You get automated backups as well as the ability to configure the backup frequency and backup retention and so on. So you're getting all of that. So backups built in. Turnkey encryption of data at rest as well as data in flight, again, comes standard. Monitoring and analytics for your databases come standard. And 24/7 support across multiple channels, right? So web, phone, we are there to make sure that your technical challenges are being dealt with, and we're giving you ease of use, right? Over 1,000 organizations have already signed up for Yugabyte Cloud accounts. So it's not like a brand new service. We've had it in private beta for the past few months. Yugabyte Cloud on day one is available in over 30 plus regions on AWS and Google Cloud, right? So you can basically be up and running. Microsoft Azure is coming soon, right? So we've got AWS, Google Cloud, 30 plus regions, so you can deploy globally. And then, it's the same database that today, in routine workloads is giving you 300,000 plus transactions per second. In fact, we are seeing a lot more, but this is just kind of the run rate. We see this very commonly. 300K plus is kind of the new standard, as Karthik mentioned in the keynote. So we did look at Abra controls very briefly in the keynotes. I'm not going to get into it in much detail, but they're an industrial IoT company that is basically building a SaaS solution for monitoring oil wells. And they're using Yugabyte Cloud because they needed Postgres compatible, but resilient and scalable database. And the fact that it was so easy, they didn't have to manage anything in the database operations was a key selling point for Abra controls. Now, some key use cases, I'll walk through it very quickly. You have database modernization use cases where companies need high resilience, low latency. They need a cloud native database that works well with frameworks like Kafka and Spring Boot. YugabyteDB offers that. You can go check out some of the awesome sessions that we have later in the Distributed SQL Summit. You also have born in the cloud applications, which are basically cloud native apps. Either, Yugabyte Cloud and YugabyteDB can be their first database, or it can be the step up after they have grown out of PostgreSQL, right? You're using Postgres or you're using MySQL, but you reach limits of scale and resilience, then you switch to YugabyteDB. And then we're seeing a new class of applications, edge and IoT apps, where there is a need for, again, Postgres compatibility, but also geo distribution and so on. So a couple of frameworks I'm going to call out very quickly. GraphQL. We're seeing a lot of customers who are interested in getting a database for GraphQL applications. And of course, Kafka, Spring, and Yugabyte as a stack for building applications. With that, I'm going to pass the ball to Chirag to actually start doing a quick demo of Yugabyte Cloud. Chirag, over to you.
Thank you, Sudha. In this demo, I'm going to show you the simplicity of our Yugabyte Cloud service, where we do the hard work so that you can focus on delivering what matters. With a really simple, intuitive design and user experience, you'll be able to achieve geo-distribution. You can deploy a Yugabyte Cloud Cluster globally to any of the regions and a cloud provider of your preference. This allows you to expand your business in different geographies, help with reduced latency, improve resiliency, and comply with data residency regulations. Second, you'll be able to build a highly available fault-tolerant architecture without any manual intervention. Your database stays up no matter what. If a node or even an entire data center goes down, you will automatically recover without downtime or any interruption or intervention. Everything will be automatically handled for you, so you don't need to do any more manual failovers. Third, we'll see ease of use. Yugabyte Cloud makes your database operations dead easy. All of the setup, configurations, shard rebalancing, load balancing, backups, restore, and any other activities that make distributed databases difficult are handled by Yugabyte Cloud. Fourth, we'll learn about horizontal and vertical scalability with no more maintenance vendors. This is not like a legacy database. It's a modern cloud-native database, which is always on 24/7. You'll be able to build always-on systems with on-demand scalability. The cluster will scale without compromising your data integrity and in-flight transactions. Lastly, you'll have the strongest and modern data security controls from day one and not consider them as an afterthought. So with that, let's get started. After you create a Yugabyte Cloud account, you land on the Getting Started screen. To spin up a cluster, simply click the Create a Free Cluster button. This takes you to the Create Cluster screen. Here you can choose between a perpetually free single node Yugabyte Cloud Free Cluster, which is tailored for basic development and exploration use cases, and a multi-node Yugabyte Cloud Cluster, which gives you a resilient, scalable, geographically distributable database that is ready for production use cases. For today's demo, let's use Yugabyte Cloud with multi-node options. When creating a new cluster, we start by giving it a name, and then you can choose between AWS or GCP cloud provider of your choice. Since I'm in California, I'll stick with the US-based region, but you can choose a region closest to your client application. We support over 30 plus regions across AWS and GCP. Now next we'll choose our fault tolerance level. Folks, keep in mind behind the scene, these are servers running a piece of technology running in AWS and GCP. These servers can go down, hard drives can fail, network packets may drop. But in today's digital world, it's really important for applications to remain functional, which requires the database to intelligently detect all these failures. With Yugabyte inbuilt fault tolerance, you can exactly do that. It offers 3 deployment options, making it very easy for you to select the option that is right for your use case. Each configuration selected spins up the appropriate cloud hardware configuration for different needs. For example, with availability zone level fault tolerance for your application, your database will be resilient to the entire data center level outage. This requires a minimum of 3 nodes deployed across at least 3 AZs. The second is node level fault tolerance, which is resilient to node level outages. Underlying node can fail, but the database will still be operational without any intervention. It requires a minimum of 3 nodes, but all of them are deployed in a single AZ, so you don't get AZ level fault tolerance with this configuration. And the last one is a single node cluster, which has no resiliency built in. That is ideal for local development and testing purposes. For any production applications, we recommend that you select maximum fault tolerance of availability zone level. Next, we are going to size the database. Sky is the limit here. You can go up to 24 nodes with each node of 96 vCPU. So if you're building an extremely high throughput app, like an IoT type use case, which requires hundreds and thousands of operations per second, or you're doing local development with tens of hundreds of operations per second, we got you covered. I'm going to start with a 3-node cluster, and every node is of 2 vCPUs. Because we selected availability zone level fault tolerance, nodes are added and removed in multiples of 3. If we had selected node level fault tolerance, nodes would be added and removed one at a time. Adapting to your setup is just a setting in a value of your cluster resizer. You can also edit your cluster config after the deployment with 0 downtime rolling upgrades, which we'll get to see in the later part of the demo. I'm not showing it here, but Yugabyte Cloud also allows you deploying your cluster in dedicated VPCs, which can be VPC peered to your client application. That gives you a private connection between your Yugabyte Cloud cluster and your VPC. This can increase security, lower latencies, and also reduce cloud networking cost. Let's go to the next step. All Yugabyte deployments have security enabled by default. During the initial spin-up, it generates a strong password for the database user, but you can add your own password. Make sure to save this in a secure place. It can be reset later, but it can't be retrieved. And with that, let's just finish the setup. So just like that, with a few easy clicks, we have a Yugabyte cluster configured with inbuilt replication and high availability. It just takes a few minutes for this deployment to complete. So in the meantime, I can track the progress here. And with a little bit of video magic, I'm just going to skip this to the end. Okay, so now that our deployment has been provisioned, I can jump right into the cluster. For instant productivity and easy access, I'm going to log into the cluster using a browser-based Cloud Shell. If you're just getting started, have a look at our quick start guide to install one of the sample data sets. It's a great way to learn your way around data exploration. Now in the Cloud Shell, I'm going to enter the password for the user that I'm connecting with. And now I'm connected. Here now you can use a Cloud Shell just like you would use a PostgreSQL shell. You can create a database, you can run your queries directly from your browser itself. You don't need to install any other library for exploring your database. let's go back to our cluster. You also have easy access to connect from the remote client shell. We have YSQL and YSQL from remote client that you can download on your local system and then connect to your database cluster. And you also have options for connected from your application. So that was relatively easy. I was able to deploy a highly fault-tolerant cluster in a region and a cloud provider of my preference. It just took me a few clicks, and it was a matter of few minutes for me to get up and running with a distributed fault-tolerant cluster. So now let's move on to our next objective, which is on-demand scalability. We'll test scalability through a sample app. I'm going to start a workload to generate some test data in the background. Let me switch over to my terminal. Here is my sample app. And I'm going to select 32 threads for both read and write operations and kick off this test. It will take a few moments for this test to build up. While that's happening, now let's jump back into the console. Soon we should be able to see operations per second and other CPU and memory metrics trending up. Let's just wait a couple of seconds. Okay, so at this time, I'm somewhere around 40% CPU, and in aggregate, we are seeing 2,500 operations per second. So everything is looking good. Now let's imagine a situation. If you need to scale up your cluster for a festive period like Black Friday or Cyber Monday to keep up with the additional traffic. Keeping in mind, in today's world, everyone expects always-on systems, no more maintenance windows. So can you scale your database while it's online, so it scales without compromising data integrity and transactions? Yes, you can. With a self-serve provisioning interface in the console, with a few simple clicks, you can scale your cluster both horizontal and vertical. For today's demo, I'm going to do horizontal scaling. I'm going to add 3 more nodes in this cluster and then confirm. It will take a few minutes to add new nodes, rebalance the data that we had already written into the cluster. Once that is done, we can turn up the traffic to test scalability. Keep in mind, all this is happening while my test sample app is still running in the background, which we can confirm with operations per second right now. So while this cluster is scaling up, let's check out our cluster backups. For simplifying day 2 operations, by default, we have enabled automated backups on your cluster. Backups are taken daily and retained for 8 days. But you can always customize the backup schedule and retention period as per your use case, or even take ad hoc backups before any critical DDL changes. You can also do self-paced restore from these backups to create new clusters. So all these are just few clicks away. It really simplifies your day 2 operations. Now let's head back to our cluster overview page and check out the cluster status. Okay, so it seems the cluster has scaled up to 6 nodes. And we can verify from performance metrics that sample app is still working. So now with this increased capacity, I'll restart the sample app, but this time with increased thread count to turn up the traffic, and then we can monitor the performance again. Let me just switch back to my terminal and turn up the traffic. It will be a few moments for the test to restart. So let's just wait. Okay, here as you can see, I'm able to achieve higher performance by scaling up the cluster. So that was relatively easy to scale up. It was just a few clicks while making sure the database is still operational and no more maintenance window was required. Just like that, you can scale down whenever you want. It's just a few clicks away. Folks, that's it in terms of the demo. Next, let's talk about data security with Yugabyte Cloud. We take the security of your data very seriously. Security is critical, but it also tends to be complex and the risk of making a mistake is potentially catastrophic. You can't just secure some things. Security has to be holistic. It has to be end-to-end. It has to include storage, that is data at rest, networking, that is data in flight, and all of the connections between different parts of the system, right? It's all about access control, IAM roles, and auditing. So let me give you an overview of the security features of Yugabyte Cloud and give you an idea how Yugabyte Cloud helps complete your overall security plan. With inbuilt security controls, you get to production faster and you don't have to worry about as many things. For securing data against unwanted access, all data at rest is encrypted in Yugabyte Cloud by default. There isn't even a setting for it. We just do it for you. Data in flight is encrypted with TLS for transport encryption for your data in flight. This applies to both your client to the database and internal database connections. We briefly touched base about VPC peering during the cluster creation. So for network isolation and security, we support dedicated VPCs, which are peered to your client applications. So that gives you lower latency, making sure your client is closer to your database. And you also have an option of using IP allow list to allow connections from trusted IPs only. Next, for controlling access to your cluster, we do have an option of database auditing and monitoring, which gives you visibility into who has access what resources and when and what changes have been made to access controls. This gives you the opportunity to identify any anomalies, any abnormal behavior. For the cloud console access, we support resource-based access controls, so you can assign admins and developers with the right access of control. As I record this session, we are also planning single sign-on and SAML in the future, which would allow you to use single sign-on with external identity management solutions like Okta for managing user access control. And lastly, for these compliance certifications, we are launching with GDPR and CCPA with a SOC 2 Type 1 scheduled for later this year. All right, folks, that's it in terms of the demo and security overview. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for that awesome demo, Chirag. Okay, folks, let's quickly jump into the pricing. I know we are coming up on the time limit. So Yugabyte Cloud offers a very simple pricing model. So it's priced based on the number of vCPUs you consume. So we offer both pay-as-you-go pricing. So it is around 25 cents per vCPU per hour. But we also offer a subscription billing option where you can basically pay upfront for an annual subscription and you get an awesome discount, right? Now, the billing increment is 1 minute increment, and you're billed, in the case of pay-as-you-go, you're billed at the end of the month. We also offer a perpetual free tier for folks who just want to get going. It's recommended for educational and non-production use. You can purchase Yugabyte Cloud through your cloud marketplaces, and we also have private offer as an option. So get started now. You can go to cloud.yugabyte.com and register for your account. Join our workshops. We have a Spring Boot app and a Hasura Cloud workshop on the 23rd that you can join. I want to leave you with a special offer. So use this promo code. Go to yugabyte.com/Yugabyte Cloud offers with hyphens. Use promo code DSS21 and get $6,000 in credit if you're a qualifying customer. So this is, again, event specific. So go right now and get your discount. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.